Hello, Planeswalkers. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic, and I'm excited to bring you my first ever gameplay video. Today we have Calvin playing Ashling the Pilgrim, Sam playing Zedruu the Great-Hearted, Natalie playing Riku of Two Reflections, and I'm playing Varina, Lich Queen. Calvin wins the die roll and starts us off. Calvin starts by playing Forgotten Cave tapped and passes. Sam plays an island and passes. Natalie plays Frontier Bivouac tapped and passes. I play a swamp and pass. Calvin plays a mountain and then casts Ashling, his commander, and passes. Sam plays a mountain for turn and passes. Natalie plays a forest, followed with Lawn of War Elves. I play Darkwater Catacombs and then cast Shapesharer. Calvin plays a mountain and then casts Darksteel Plate. Sam plays an island and then casts Winter Orb, and we all groan for a moment. Natalie plays a forest and then taps it and Lawn of War Elves to cast Lightning Greaves and attaches Lightning Greaves to Lawn of War Elves. I play no lands this turn. I try to play Zombie Outlander, and then I realize I can't untap all of my lands, so I instead cast Diregraph Ghoul. Calvin plays a mountain, and then equips Darksteel Plate to Ashling and attacks Sam for 1 and passes turn. Sam plays Temple of the False God and passes. Natalie plays a forest, taps Lawn of War Elves to help cast Phantom Nantuko, which enters with 2/1/1 counters, and then she equips the Greaves to it. I play a Myriad Landscape tapped, and I swing my zombies at Sam for 3 and pass. Calvin misses a land drop for turn and attacks Sam for 1 before passing. Sam misses a land drop and passes. Natalie adds a +1/+1 counter onto Phantom Nantuko at the end of Sam's turn. She misses a land drop on her turn, and she taps everything to cast Chronozoa, which enters with 3 vanishing counters on it. Then she passes turn. I untap a land for my turn, and then I pass. Calvin plays a mountain for turn, and attacks Sam with Ashling again for 1 more damage. Sam misses a land drop for his turn, discards a card, and asks that the table have pity on him. Natalie, at the end of Sam's turn, adds another counter on Nantuko. On her turn, she starts by untapping the Bivouac and removing a counter from Chronozoa. She then casts Essence Warden before attacking Sam with Chronozoa. On my turn, I play a Plains, and I tap 2 and crack Myriad Landscape to grab 2 islands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Calvin plays a mountain for turn and casts Pyromancer's Goggles, and then he attacks Sam for 1 before passing. Sam plays a mountain and cheers because he now can finally play the game. He then casts Dissipation Field and tells everyone to leave him alone. Natalie again adds a counter on Phantom Nantuko at the end of Sam's turn. On her upkeep, she again untaps the Bivouac, and another time counter is removed from Chronozoa. She plays Swiftwater Cliffs as her land for turn, gaining 1 life, and then she moves to combat and swings the Chronozoa at Calvin for 3. Then she passes the turn. I play a Zombie Outlander, and I decide not to attack Sam thanks to Dissipation Field. Then I pass the turn. Calvin plays a mountain, followed by a Basilisk Collar, then passes. Sam top decks a mountain, plays it for the turn, and then passes. Natalie adds a counter on Nantuko on Sam's end step, and on her upkeep, Chronozoa's last counter is removed and it's sacrificed. This makes 2 Chronozoa copies, allowing Natalie to finally gain some life off of Essence Warden. She untaps the Cliffs, and she plays a Forest for turn, and taps all she can to cast Parallel Lives, then passes. On my turn, I untap a swamp and pass. Calvin untaps a mountain, misses a land drop, and then taps Pyromancer's Goggles and a mountain to cast Fire Diamond, then passes. Sam draws a Plains, casts Authority of Consuls, and I'll hammer its archive. Natalie adds yet another counter on the Nantuko Phantom at the end of Sam's turn. On her upkeep, upkeep, she now removes a counter from each of her 2 copies of Chronozoa, untaps Bivouac, and plays a mountain. She attacks Calvin with the 2 copies of Chronozoa, dealing him 6 damage. For my turn, I play an Underground River, and then I Vindicate the Winter Orb. The table all lets out a sigh of relief, and even Sam thanks me. Calvin is amazed that he can finally untap all of his lands. He plays a mountain and equips Basilisk Collar to Ashling, then passes. Sam misses a land draw and casts Arrest on Ashling. In response, Calvin activates Ashling 3 times and deals 3 damage to each creature and each player, and he gains 36 life from lifelink. This kills pretty much everything except for the giant Phantom Nantuko. Because Ashling dealt damage to Sam, she is returned to Calvin's hand thanks to Dissipation Field. Next, Sam plays an Otherworld Atlas and taps it to put a charge counter on it, then passes. Natalie adds a counter onto Nantuko at the end of Sam's turn. She misses a land drop, then casts Undo Giant and searches for a forest, which she puts onto the battlefield tapped. At this point, we've forgotten that everyone but Sam's creatures enter tapped, but soon we correct that. On my turn, I miss a land drop and cast a Burnished Heart, which also mistakenly enters untapped. Then I pass the turn. Calvin top decks a mountain and casts Ashling from his hand for 2 mana. Then he equips Ashling with the Darksteel Plate. Next he casts Outpost Siege, choosing Cons, and passes. Sam now realizes that our creatures should have all entered tapped, and he should have gained 6 life, with the combination of Alhamrit's Archive and Authority of Consuls. He plays an island and then taps Otherworld Atlas to make all players draw a card, except because of Alhamrit's Archive, Sam gets to draw 2 cards. At this point, I sacrifice Burnished Heart to get a couple of lands onto the battlefield tapped, as it cannot block anyway. Sam then taps 5 to cast Mystic Barrier and chooses left, making it so all players can only attack to the left. I am most disheartened by this because it means Natalie, who has the biggest board stake, can only attack me, but she assures me that we're friends and it will be okay. As always, Natalie adds another counter onto Phantom Nantuko during Sam's end step. She asks Calvin if he would attack Sam if she got rid of the Dissipation Field. Calvin agrees. She then casts Acidic Slime, destroying the Dissipation Field. Sam complains and says, "But I don't have a Winter Orb anymore." Sam then reminds Natalie that the Acidic Slime enters tapped and that he will gain 2 life. Natalie is fine with this though, as long as Dissipation Field is gone. She then plays Yavimaya Elder and passes. For my turn, I play a Reliquary Tower as my land for turn, then cast Kefnet's Monument, followed by Oketra's Monument, and then I finally cast my commander, Varina Lich Queen. I first resolve the Kefnet's Monument trigger. Because we are all still ganging up on Sam, who has no creatures to target, I choose Yavimaya Elder so as to not draw hate from my new allies, as I think it's the weakest option. I then get a 1/1 white warrior token that enters tapped, and Sam gains 4 life. Then I pass the turn. On the beginning of Calvin's upkeep, he exiles the top card of his library to the Outpost Siege. It's Faithless Looting, which he casts. He draws 2 cards and discards 2 lands. He then casts Furnace of Wrath, which will double all damage to permanents and players. He then attacks Sam with Ashling, who he also adds 2 +1/+1 counters to, dealing Sam 3 more commander damage, which is doubled to 6 thanks to the Furnace. He then plays a Loxodon Warhammer before passing the turn. Sam misses a land drop and plays Sublime Exhalation, destroying every creature except for Ashling. That's right, even Phantom Nantuko. Natalie tutors for 2 lands off of the Yavimaya Elder trigger. Next, Sam taps the Atlas, and everyone draws 1 card except for Sam, who again draws 2 cards with Alhamrit's Archive. He then casts a Boros Key Rune, which he taps to cast Chain to the Rocks, targeting Ashling. Calvin sends her back to his command zone. Sam passes, and Natalie is relieved that Sam's turn is finally over. On Natalie's turn, she plays an island and casts Unexpected Results. She spins the wheel and...
What do we have for Johnny?
It's Ridiculous.
We were all pretty amazed by that. What a card. The cryptic annelid enters tapped. Then Natalie scries 1 and puts it on the bottom. Then she scries 2, keeping 1 on the top and then putting 1 on the bottom. And finally she scries 3, keeping 2 on the top and putting 1 on the bottom. Next she casts Doubling Season and equips Lightning Grooves to the annelid and passes the turn. Here I have my most explosive turn. First I cast Rooftop Storm, and Sam wonders if I'm going to go infinite, but I assure him that my turn will not be that busted. I start by casting Wayward Servant, which I explain will cause my opponents to each lose 1 life whenever I get a zombie, and therefore for zombies entering the battlefield, Sam will only be gaining 1 life. Then I resolve Oketra's Monument, getting me a warrior token, and I groan as Sam gains another 2 life. Then I go to resolve the Kepnit's Monument trigger, and I realize there are no legal targets as Cryptic Annelid is equipped with Lightning Greaves. So I continue by casting both Phyrexian Ghoul and Undead Warchief, causing all of my opponents to lose 2 life, gaining me 2 life, and 2 more warriors, and gaining Sam 8 more life. Next I pay the commander tax to cast Varina, causing my opponents to lose 1 life, gaining me another life, and a warrior, and gaining Sam 4 life. And for my final play, I cast Good Old Gary, also known as Great Merchant of Asphodel. This again triggers Wayward Servant, Oketra's Monument, and Sam's Authority of Consuls and Alhamrit's Archive. Each of my opponents loses 1 life, I gain 1 life, I get a warrior token, and Sam gains 4 life. Finally, Gary himself drains my opponents for 7 life each, and I gain 21 life, going up to 65. Then I pass the turn. On Calvin's turn, Outpost Siege triggers and exiles Terrain Generator from the top of Calvin's library, which he plays for the turn. He then casts Ashling for only the 2nd time from the command zone. Next he casts Repercussion, which means whenever a creature is dealt damage, it's going to deal that much damage to its controller. But since all damage is doubled, thanks to the Furnace of Wrath, all of that damage is also going to be doubled. As I jurtle with the camera, Calvin decides to rearrange all of his permanents just to mess with the audience. As Sam untaps his lands, Natalie reminds him that he missed the Mystic Barrier trigger, and Sam explains he's decided to keep the direction the same anyway. He starts his main phase by again tapping Otherworldly Atlas, and we all draw a card, and Sam draws an additional card. Finally, Sam casts Barrett's Steward of Archive, adding to his Pillar Fort, and passes the turn. At this point, Natalie needs to check her phone because one of her cards is in Japanese, and she needs to be sure of exactly how it works. She plays a mountain for turn, and then casts Rite of Replication Kent. In an attempt to win the game, she targets Gary, who, if she can make 5 copies of it, would win her the game by draining each of her opponents of 50 life. Unfortunately for Natalie, she forgot that both Calvin and I have responses. I actually forget mine at first, though, and pass priority to Calvin. Calvin decides he's going to deal 3 damage to each creature and player by putting 3 counters on Ashling. This damage is doubled to 6 because of the Furnace of Wrath, and then any creatures dealt said damage also deal 6 damage to their controllers thanks to Repercussion, and then that 6 damage is again doubled to 12 thanks to the Furnace of Wrath. So basically, any creatures dealt this much damage is going to deal 12 damage to their controller. I now remember my response, and I respond by sacrificing my entire board to Phyrexian Ghoul, turning him into a 20/20. Varina goes back to the command zone. I take 6 from Ashling, and 12 because I decided to keep my Phyrexian Ghoul on the battlefield. The Rite of Replication fizzles, and Natalie passes the turn. I start my turn by cycling Desert of the Mind, and then I play a Soul Ring. I look around to see if there are any creatures, and I see there are not, so I decide to cast Liliana Vess. Next, I remove 2 counters from Liliana to tutor and put Gravecrawler on top of my library in the hopes that I can eventually combo off. Because I still have Rooftop Storm, I pay 0 to play Newscraft Mob, and I get a warrior, and Sam gains 4 life. Then I pass the turn. On Calvin's turn, Outpost Siege reveals Solemn Simulacrum, which Calvin decides to keep in exile. He then casts Ashling for 6 mana. I remove a counter from the mob and get a 2/2 zombie, and Sam gains 2 life. Calvin then equips Ashling with the Darksteel Plate and passes. Sam again activates the Atlas and we all draw cards. Next he plays Monastery Siege and chooses Cons. The mob triggers again and I get another zombie and Sam gains 2 more life. Next, Sam casts Fevered Visions, causing the mob to trigger again. Next, Sam casts Monobarbs, which I counter with Negate, and the mob triggers again before he passes the turn. I missed one of the mob's triggers with Negate, but that didn't really matter, as Natalie proceeded to blow up the whole board on her turn by casting Warp World, one of Red's most powerful board wipes. It basically says we shuffle all of our permanents, including lands, back into our library, then reveal that many cards, and put all non-planeswalker permanents revealed this way onto the battlefield. But before the deed can be done, Calvin responds by forcing me to sacrifice my creatures in order to lower the number of cards I get to reveal after the shuffle. He does this by triple activating Ashling again, dealing 6 damage to each creature and player, and then causing those creatures to deal 12 damage to their controllers. By necessity, I have to sacrifice all of my creatures. When Warp World finally resolves, we all have completely new boards. Most of the cards will not make a difference in the game, so I will not bother naming them all, but here are the cards worth mentioning. Calvin gets back both Furnace of Wrath and Repercussion, as well as a Mirage Mirror. Sam gets Ghostly Prison, Mesa Enchantress, a Gold Knight Castigator, Blazing Archon, Swiftfoot Boots, Orbs of Warning, Grand Abolisher, and several other permanents not worth mentioning. Natalie gets Hornet Queen, Clone, Quicksilver Gargantuan, Mindclaw Shaman, Eternal Witness, Swiftfoot Boots, and some random enchantment I can't remember. I get a Land Tax, Vindictive Lich, Lich Lord of Unks, Kefnet's Monument, White of Precinct 6, Angel of Sanctions, and a couple more zombies. First off, we have several enter the battlefield triggers to resolve, starting with Natalie. First, Natalie makes 3 flying insect tokens with Hornet Queen, then attempts to make copies of the Queen using Clone and Quicksilver Gargantuan. But Calvin stops her because he finds the rules that say if a clone somehow enters the battlefield at the same time as another creature, the clone cannot become a copy of that creature. So, Clone goes to the graveyard, although the Gargantuan remains on the battlefield. Next, Natalie uses Eternal Witness's Enter the Battlefield ability to get Acidic Slime back to her hand. And finally, I choose to exile Sam's Grand Abolisher with my Angel of Sanctions trigger. Next, Natalie remembers Mindclaw Shaman's trigger, and so she makes Sam reveal his hand, but she is unable to find anything in his hand worth casting. So, instead, she just decides to show the rest of the board Sam's hand. Finally, she equips Swiftfoot Boots to Hornet Queen and passes the turn. I start my turn by triggering my new land tax. While I'm searching for my lands, Natalie cracks her Evolving Wilds and searches for a basic as well. On my main phase, I tap Lich Lord of Unks and make a 1/1 zombie wizard token. I decide not to attack so I can leave up blockers, and I pass the turn. At the end of my turn, Calvin flashes in Dictate of the Twin Gods, which to all of our dismay resolves. Now all damage is going to be quadrupled with the combination of Dictate of the Twin Gods and Furnace of Wrath. Next, Calvin casts Comet Storm, where X is 1, multi-kicking it 4 times. With that, he chooses to deal 1 damage to 4 targets. He targets Sam's Gold Knight Castigator, Blazing Archon, Natalie's Eternal Witness, and my Angel of Sanctions. Of course, instead of dealing 1 damage, it deals 4 damage to those creatures, and then each of those creatures deals 16 damage to its controller thanks to Repercussion. This deals 32 damage to Sam, which is doubled to 64 thanks to his Gold Knight Castigator, and it deals 16 damage to me and Natalie. This kills Sam and Natalie, and to finish me off, Calvin casts Inferno Titan, dealing 12 damage to my zombie token, which deals 48 damage to my face, and Calvin wins the game. Looking back, this was a really fun game with lots of cool interactions. Even with Winter Orb slowing the game down in the beginning, it did give us all a chance to build our boards up without worrying about anyone getting too crazy. Sam's deck did a good job of protecting itself, but it did not get much in the way of bombs to finish off his opponents. Natalie had an explosive start, but the board wipes caused her to lose her thunder, and she was mostly top-decking towards the end. I had the same problem, as I was never able to attack before my creatures were burned alive or destroyed, so I was never able to trigger Varina and draw more cards. Calvin was extremely lucky to get back both Furnace of Wrath and Repercussion, and without that insane combo, the game would have turned out much differently. But things turned out the way they did, and that's just sometimes what happens. Overall, we had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too. Thanks for watching. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Until next time, take care, take it easy.